Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4. 325. High, but to get 3 1/4. But to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300. And hello from Dallas, Texas. We welcome you to the Mike McGavel Jones Show. We're broadcasting live from Lincoln Center in the north end of Dallas, Texas, and excited and happy to have a friend that I've had for many, many years, just about 40 years.
Been a long time, Mike.
A long time.
I was a mere little boy.
You were. You were a small tyke. We have Jimmie Dean Coffey, professional auctioneer from Bloomington, Indiana, and he is the current Indiana State Champion Auctioneer. Congratulations.
I am. Thank you. Thank you.
When did that happen?
In November.
November
At the Indiana Auctioneers Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And
where did this take place?
It was in Indianapolis, the Crown Plaza in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Almost home for you.
It was within an hour of the house.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great competition, and I was honored to have won that deal.
Well, you know, I have been fortunate enough to judge a lot of contests, and from the World Auto Auction, the International Auctioneer Championship with the National Auctioneer Association. I have judged the Indiana contest, and I can assure you, between Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, that whole belt right through there, those contests are not like any other state contest. Their bid calling expertise is way above average compared to any other state. And I don't mean to demean any other state, but it's just a simple numbers. It's a numbers game. Texas has always been very strong. We've had great auctioneers, world champions come out of here. And then, of course, in your area, you have a lot of auctioneers.
There are. It's a big auction area.
It's a big numbers
region.
Thing. Yep. So I always like to start some of these conversations, and we'll talk about how we met and all that later. But you were born when?
I was born in February of 1964.
1964 in February.
I'm a year away from getting the cheaper coffee, Mike.
I'm already there. And you were born in Bloomington?
I was born in Bloomington, Indiana, and lived there for first 18 years of my life, and then I moved, 17, then moved down to Texas and lived down here for a few years.
Tell me about your childhood.
Well, I grew up. I grew up in the horse industry, really, Mike. My grandfather, who I was very close to, I was his buddy, and I was on his hip pocket all the time. My granddad owned a Western store and a leather shop. He did a lot of repairs of saddle and horse tack and traded horses. He was a horse trader. Every Thursday, he went to a horse auction, and any time I was out of school, could skip school, could pretend I was sick or on vacation from school, I would go with him to the horse auction. And Granddad had a spot in the auction block where he stood back behind the auctioneer, and there you would find me as well. Granddad could call bids. He could auction. He didn't do it by trade. He would fill in for some auctioneers if they needed help. And I just remember laying there. I'd stay all night with Granddad a lot, and Granddad talked fast for me, and he would do it. And then that led to my grandmother's. After my grandfather passed away when I was 16 or 17. And my grandmother pushed me to go ahead and become an auctioneer. And I did that. She at the time, I needed a little help, and she gave me the money to go to auction school when I was 18 or whatever it was.
It's funny how the correlating stories between, well, even you and myself, and how I went to auction school and relationships with grandparents were so important that really laid the foundation. I think the grandparents sometimes become a greater influence than the parents. But I know tell me about your parents too.
Mom and Dad I was raised by them. They lived at home till I was 17.
What'd your dad do?
My dad was a couple things. My dad was a builder. He was a carpenter, and he went on early in my life. He became a firefighter. And Mike, when I started in the auction business, I was 19, 20 years old, and we talk about the grandparents. I just told you the story of my grandfather and how I got in the auction business. Well, when you're 19, it's pretty tough to get somebody's trust to hand over their estate or their life savings
or anything.
And believe it or not, I shortly had children, and then they require income and money, and I needed more income, so I followed my father's footsteps. Mm-hmm. I stepped into the fire service, and I was a firefighter for 29 years. I have since retired. But the cool part about the fire service, it allowed me to build our business because I had 2 days off to work my business, my real estate, my auction business, out of 3. Mm-hmm. Work one day, off 2. Work one day, off 2 was the fire schedule. So followed my father's footsteps as well as my grandfather's push to be in the auction. And the auction industry was my all-time love. And the fire department just allowed me to not have to live on that and let me build our business.
Means to an end.
It was.
Yeah.
It really was, and it worked out well for me.
Got your little retirement out of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You came to Texas.
I did.
You dropped passing through a young cowboy. Tell me the story about that.
That's an interesting story as well. I started rodeoing when I was about 13. I started traveling the rodeo circuit when I was 14, 15. Heavy on the road when I was 16, 17. And that ended me up in Nevada, which then got cold up there, so I moved on south in that same trip. And I ended up in Texas. The rodeo travels ended me up in Dallas and Gainesville, Texas, and ended up training horses in Gainesville for a few years, and that's where I met my lovely wife, Phyllis. Mm-hmm. And she'll tell you that she should have been aware of a guy that had to come 4 states away to find a wife.
Yeah, well, there was nobody to tell her otherwise.
That's right.
Yeah. So when you were up in Gainesville area, just for the sake of conversation, because there's a lot of people from North Texas, besides around the world that tune into this broadcast, there's a lot of people in Cook County and Denton County and Wise and Grayson that watch this show. Who are some of the folks that you worked with in the horse business?
Worked with a lot of people would know Larry Sullivan,
former judge,
former district state judge. Larry's who I worked for most of the time up there. Larry and Karen, they were great to me. I worked for them for about 3 years, and I trained their show horses and worked in their show horse barn. In connection with that, we were very tied with Tommy Mannion. We did the
down in Pilot Point, Aubrey area,
over in Pilot Point and Aubrey. We did the World Classic sale every year. Was Tommy and Larry's sale. So I was involved in that in the early 80s. There was several others. One good one that's was talking football before the broadcast here, and Ben's it's football Super Bowl time, and piece that's always been kind of a standout for me is we were very connected with Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw is a ranch guy and has quarter horses, registered quarter horses, and he was often at our barn. And I'll never forget the story. And my wife and kids laugh about this all the time, and they always have to tell it. But there's a little restaurant up there called Trails Inn.
Out at the motel.
Right out there at the motel, a little cafe.
Out on 82.
Out on 82. And that's where we would always go eat lunch, from the ranch. And me and Larry and 2 or 3 of the guys from the ranch was eating lunch, and Terry Bradshaw went with us, and we were sitting there eating like we always did. That happened many times. And at the time I was I did Skull or Copenhagen, and at that time, if you remember right, Terry Bradshaw was a lead for Redman.
That's right.
So I said, well, guys, I'll be at the ranch in a minute. I've got to run up to Sibley's, the grocery store. You remember that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. I knew Mr. Sibley very well.
Yeah. And so I said, I got to run up to Sibley's and get some stuff. And Terry said, Coffey, I'll go with you. And I said, all right. He said, I need to get some Redman. So we're walking through Sibley's together, and I pick up mine, and he picks up. Back then, the cash register, Mike, the cashier actually had to key
Push
in the numbers.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
The millennial group don't realize how that used
they're
to
not.
happen.
They weren't scanning back then.
No, there was no scanning involved. So so the cashier lady, she's rung up mine. She rung up Terry's, and she looked up. She did a kind of a triple glance, and she said, "Has anyone ever told you look just like Terry Bradshaw?" He said, I do hear that occasionally, and chuckled, and we walked out of Sibley's, and to this day, that lady has no idea that she actually had Terry Bradshaw at her line.
That is funny. That is funny. Yeah, that whole area up there, of course, I still go back, and I'm up there probably, I don't know, every 2 or 3 weeks. My mother still lives there. And of course, Terry has since gone over into Thackerville,
yeah.
which is where the world's largest casino is.
That wasn't there when I was there.
WinStar. Well, let me tell you, when I was a kid, you couldn't buy beer or wine or anything in Gainesville. Mm-hmm. So you either went west to Lindsay or Munster, hence Germans. They like their beer.
Oh, yeah.
And but anyway, there was no you had to go into Oklahoma if you wanted anything to drink, and at night
Lindsay closed at 12,
and then you had to go.
Thackerville closed at 2 a.m.
That's right. And we would drive across, and the first exit, and which is right where WinStar Casino sits today. It's really funny. One of the first auctions I ever did in Oklahoma was the Thackerville post office. I auctioned off the post office and a couple of buildings next to it. And but if you go on up to exit 2 or 3, right up in there, that's where Terry's ranch is today. Mm-hmm. And he's probably got 800 to 1,000 acres, and he hasn't been able to sell it. He's been for sale for forever. Terry's real big on buying something, building something, spending a lot of money, and then going somewhere else.
Right.
And he did it out by the Texas Motor Speedway. He's done it in Louisiana. He's done it in Florida, and now he's got the Thackerville property for sale, and it's a gorgeous property, but it is a very expensive property. I mean, you got to
be the right person.
You got to be the right person. You got to have a lot of digits in your cash register.
You bet.
So, yeah, Terry Bradshaw's a funny guy. I ran into him in Hollywood on Rodeo Drive at one of the hotels, and this has been a few years ago. And he was there with Jimmy Johnson and Howie, and so the whole Fox crew. And it was a Saturday because they were there to get ready for the Sunday games. And I said, "Hey, Terry, you still got Thackerville?" And he says, "Oh, I got Thackerville, man." He said, "If you're in the neighborhood, just drive in the gate. Tell him I said hey." So but he's a real nice guy.
He is
just
very, very nice, personable guy.
Yeah. He doesn't carry a celebrity like a lot of them do. So you came to Texas and you met Phyllis, and then you bundled her up and just made her parents so happy.
I was not the chosen son-in-law for a couple of years there.
Now while you were there, you and I met.
We did
in the early '80s.
That's
probably
right.
around 81, 82.
Yep.
And there was an auctioneer named Cecil Ward, and Cecil used to run the Gainesville Livestock facility. His son then took it over after Cecil passed away. But Cecil sent me an auction one day on I-35 just north of Sanger, and it was just a little bitty. This I want to say, what was that guy? I'll think of it. Granigan. Granigan was the man's name. I don't remember his first name. Got to remember, this has been almost 40 years ago.
Yes.
Anyway, Harry Granigan was the guy, and he wanted Cecil to do the sale, and Cecil didn't want to do the sale because there wasn't enough money there, and there really wasn't any equipment worth a flip. Just old, wore out, beat up stuff like a sharecropper would have. And so Cecil sent me the auction. I said, "Yeah, well, I'll do it," because I'd only been an auctioneer for 2 or 3 years, 3 years, I think. And I wasn't doing a burning business. I was getting a few estates, but I wasn't getting rich. And there was no real estate involved. Farm was not on the table. It was just stuff, chicken, stuff to raise chickens and stuff. And but I knew a banker, and the banker says, "I've got 2 or 3 pieces of equipment we can put in there." Well, we were able to build a decent little sale. It wasn't a huge money deal, but it was something. And I asked you to help me, and you helped me with that auction. And then we did an auction for the Morton Museum. to raise money early on. This was like when they first started raising money for improvements to the museum.
Right.
And you worked that auction. I think, yeah. Now,
Did we do a lumber yard as well, or
we probably did a lumber yard too.
I think I did help you with the lumber
You
yard.
did more than one or two, because at a certain point I had said to myself, and that I do that a lot. I talk to myself a lot. I'm gonna ask this guy if he wants to be my business partner, and then we can work together, because I think we make a good team. I think we've got a potential here of being a good operation. And I brought that up to you, and what did you say?
I think that was probably the day I said, well, Mike, I've got a couple of changes in mind, and moving back to Indiana was what was that notification.
Yeah. So my hopes and dreams of there being a Jones Coffey operation, that was dispelled very quickly, because you basically broke the news that you were going back to Indiana and going to live in your hometown and start your career up there.
Well, I had two grandfathers up there that was businessmen and was pretty well known in the industry, or in town as business, so I knew that
you had roots.
I had roots up there.
Yep. Hard to give that up.
It is.
Now, you were not the popular son-in-law. Tell us about that.
Well, my mother-in-law and father-in-law are great people, and they were very good to me. And they're a farm family. They were a Gainesville farm family. They had a big farm on the southeast side of Gainesville. And the family was a farm family, and they were close. I mean, Sundays, that's where we ate Sunday dinner after church, and every afternoon we'd go help put up hay or do whatever needed to be done as a family. And no one had left the nest that far yet. There were several, the other kids had left the nest, all but my brother-in-law, but they were close.
Was this the baby daughter?
And I was taking the baby daughter. So when I moved her away, it was,
frosty.
It was. My mother-in-law didn't understand that at all, and she
took it personal.
She did. She took it personal, and it took us about a year to get around that. And today, I have a great relationship with my mother-in-law, and have had for 34 years now. Been married 35, so for 34 years, I've had a great relationship with my mother-in-law, and it never was
contentious.
Contentious is just, I think she was hurt. She was hurt, and she missed her baby girl. And shortly after we left, they sold the family farm, and they moved to Oklahoma. And I told my wife when we left, I said, honey, anytime you want to go back, we'll figure out a way to get back here, visit, whatever. And that's what we ran with, and we did.
Well, and of course, and her sister, Ramona has been friends with my family for years, and my mom and stepdad and all that. So there's always these connections in small towns. You never know how they're going to go. So fast forward, we shipped you off to Indiana, got you out of our hair there.
That's right.
And then one day, I'm out in Reno, Nevada. And this would have been, 2001 or 2? It had to be around there. We were doing a winter symposium. Well, I'm basing that on data that I have.
Okay.
So around early 2000s.
Archived
early
data.
2000s, yeah. I can remember that stuff when I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning driving down the road. So I go into this National Auctioneer Association winter symposium in Reno, which is basically CEs and education, and it was an opportunity to have some classes. And some of the guys like to go sit and then go through classes and then go skiing or whatever they want to do, or go whatever and ride it off. So that's kind of what was going down. And I look across the room, and there you are. And
I believe we was at a restaurant right after the classes that evening, and you and the redhead, Lori, walked in, and we made eye contact.
I looked across the room, and I said, well, golly, I hadn't seen that guy in a long time. It's been over 10 years.
And Phyllis did the same thing with Lori. And Phyllis looked at me, and she said, I think that's Lori Allen. I think wasn't that her maiden name, Lori Allen? And I said, well, I think Mike's wife's name is Lori. So she said, well, I was great friends with her all through school.
Right.
And they had disconnected then after school for 10 or 15 years, whatever it was, and they were on drill teams together all through school. And
so the connection again. So then we so we were both very active with the NAA, the National Auctioneer Association, and of course I was on the board, and you have been on the board. And then you've been extremely involved with the CAI program, which is in your hometown.
That's right.
You know, we do that at Bloomington, Indiana, at the university, Indiana University, Alumni Hall and all that. I mean, I go back to Bloomington to 1974, 73. I used to go there annually for the National Junior Achievement Conference.
Oh, really?
So we would bus up from Texas, from Houston. And so I remember being there during the Bobby Knight championship days, mid-70s and 76, 75, 76. And so I was used to Bloomington. I fell in love with that campus. We lived in the quad while we were there. And but I was really looking at the journalism school, the Ernie Powell. Yeah, I mean, so I really was paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, then when the CAI program came along, I went to CAI in 91. In 92, 93, graduated in 93, and you literally, your office, once you joined United Country, you located your office right downtown, south of downtown, just about a block.
Yeah, I'm 3 blocks from the square.
You took the Kentucky Fried Chicken location that had the bucket in the air, and you remodeled it, and it's a fantastic small facility. I mean, it's not big, but it's first class. It looks first class. I look at it as one of our shining lights in our company because you did such a great job with it. And
Thank you.
You have children. Tell me about your kids and what they're doing.
Phyllis and I had 2 kids. Krista's 32 this year. Wow.
You're old.
Cody's 29 this past year. Wow. Krista gave us a grandson 4 years ago that's Pap's little buddy.
That hangs on your leg.
He is on my leg. He is Pap's little buddy.
This is the reincarnate of you and your grandfather.
There you go.
I see the pictures on Facebook all the time.
I'm pretty proud of him.
Yeah, I can tell.
Maybe too much.
No. It's really perfect. It's really perfect, and I couldn't be happier for you. Of course, now I have a grandson that's getting ready to turn 5, and so Landon.
Which, incidentally, is my grandson's name.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And then, so this last week, at the beginning of auction school, you know, I always do a car sale on Saturdays, but I found out from Mackenzie came by the auction school, my daughter, and she says, you know, Landon's first basketball game is tomorrow.
Oh.
I said, well, what time is it? She says, 9 o'clock. And so, needless to say, I did drills at the auction school, went directly to the First Baptist Church in Carrollton and watched 4 and 5-year-old kids try to play basketball.
That has to be a hoot.
That was a trip. Was a trip. But wonderful, just wonderful. So tell me what your kids are doing, because I know there's a lot of involvement in the real estate business.
Yeah, you bet. Both of my kids are with our company. And back to the grandkids, I'll just make a real quick sidebar to that. Both of those kids are having me a granddaughter this year.
Really?
So I've got Cody, my 29-year-old son. He works for our office, with our office in Bloomington, and he's having a daughter in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
February 1st.
Congratulations.
And Krista is going to have a daughter. We found out it was a daughter last week, and she is due in mid-May.
Wow,
so
you're going to be covered up.
I'm going to have all kinds of pap
duties.
Going
to be a lot of crying going on.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. And Krista is she's an Okie now. I don't want to call her an Okie. She's a cowboy.
Yeah.
She came to Oklahoma State University, went to school there, and I like to say she met a hairy leg there. And her and he got married after school and went off to grad school, and they wanted to migrate back to Stillwater. They love the town. We love the town. And
Oklahoma State
Cowboys, you bet. Go Pokes. And
didn't Garth Brooks do some stuff?
He
I
did.
think he kind of got started.
He wrote songs setting up there at Joe's, and
Eskimo Joe's.
He was an Oklahoma State boy. And but anyway, my daughter said, Dad, if we're going to be moving back to OSU area in Stillwater, said, how can I get involved with the United Country office there? And she said, maybe we'd even want to look, see if we want to own it or something. So first one thing then leads to another, and
so they run the office
within a few months I bought that office, and she runs the office there. We have since expanded into all of eastern Oklahoma, if you will. We've got a United Country franchise in Atoka, Oklahoma. Atoka.
Sure. For clarification, for those who don't know all the ins and outs, I joined United Country around, it was actually January of 2007. I was at the time chairman of the board of the National Auctioneer Association. CEO of the company, Dan Duffy, asked me if I'd be interested in taking a position creating the auction division, which a lot of auctioneers were watching. I approached you about an office. You were still tied up with the fire department, very much so, and doing your independent auctions and selling real estate, but we had about 55 auctioneers who joined United Country Real Estate, which is now almost 100 years old, or is about 100 years old. A great franchise system of rural, recreational, farm and ranch offices all over rural America from coast to coast. And of course, I had mentioned it to you, and you were knee deep in being a fireman. And I remember the day we were looking for someone to get involved in management as far as recruiting auctioneers and realtors, heavy on the auction side, because the way the balance is, there was less than 1% of our company was auctioneers at the time. Today, out of how many offices do we have right now on that side of the business?
On the auction side?
Yeah, well, not just auction, but the United Country side, like
500-ish.
Roughly 500 offices, and out of that, we have auction representation about, 20
probably 20%.
20 to 25% of our total business now is auction.
That's right.
Which is phenomenal. I mean, that's phenomenal. And so I can still recall the day you and I did an auction in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we were driving up, and you asked my opinion. Should you consider, leaving the fire life? And we talked about money and retirement and what that looked like. What was that going to cost you? What was it going to cost you to leave that stable environment and that retirement and all that? And I just told you that I thought you should consider it. And then we did that little auction in about 2 feet of water.
Driving rain.
I've never seen that much rain at an auction in my life. If you can imagine, it was a company that manufactured and installed street lights
and stop signs
and signals.
Contracting company.
And it came a rain, and we were selling outside. I just remember we had pallets, and there was things on the pallets, and the water was going over the pallets.
Pallet deep.
We were standing on pallets, and we were still getting wet. It's the wettest I've ever been at an auction in my life. But anyway, fast forward. Here we are in 2019, and now you are, what is your official title with United Country?
My duties are vice president. My title is director of business development still.
Yeah.
But basically vice president of the auction division, work directly with Sean Terrell's president. I'm pretty much the vice president, and we have Trina there, and work with you then a lot on United stuff as well.
So in between your duties with United Country, your offices, your 3 or 4 offices of United Country, working with your kids, now you got grandkids.
There's no time for the fire department, so I've been retired from there 5 years, and I don't know how I did it when I did it.
No, I understand it, because you're a worker, you're a doer. You're one of those guys. You've taught at Ruppert Auction School. You've been involved with that school, a very reputable auction school. You've been involved with philanthropy. You do a lot of charity and fundraising auctions all over Indiana, heavy in Indianapolis.
All over the Midwest.
Yeah.
We do a lot of stuff into Illinois.
Wherever you have to go. Our businesses are a lot alike from that standpoint, because I do the same thing, you do the same thing. We come from the same background. And so it's been a good run. It's been a good run for you.
It has.
Now you're the state champion for the state of Indiana, the Hoosier State, which I love Hoosiers. I'm a big Hoosier guy. And of course, did you take me? Am I wrong about this? Did you take me to the Hoosier Gym? Am I imagining this, or did you tell me how to get there?
I did not take you there.
You must have told me.
I probably did.
Because I remember I was in Bloomington. This was right before I became president of the National, and we were in Bloomington, and I wanted to go to the gym, and you told me where to go.
Yeah.
And so, was it Knightstown? Is that where that is? It's not where everybody thinks it is.
Yeah, I can't remember now
it
exactly.
Is
but
Knightstown.
I think I looked it up.
I
don't think I've ever been in it. Well, I was in that gym one time, but now I can't remember.
Well, for those who remember the movie Hoosiers, I am probably the biggest Hoosiers. I've probably seen that movie more times than any movie ever, and I'm a big John Wayne guy. And I've seen all those movies dozens of times. But I love that movie so much, and I'm a big Gene Hackman fan. And I just remember when they were talking about doing a photo shoot for the National Auctioneer Association. They said, "Is there any place you really like to take a picture?" And I said, "Well, I like to take a picture in front of Reunion Arena, the Hyatt, downtown Dallas, and I'd like to go to the Hoosier Gym." Mm-hmm. Then we did a photo shoot right in the Hoosier Gym. It's the craziest thing I ever did. I don't know.
Just an old little.
I'm not even from Indiana.
Just an old little school gym.
Just a little school gym that they almost tore down.
Right.
They almost tore it down. Now they make it an event center. And the people that used to do, what is it? What is the trade magazine for antiques and collectibles up there? It's like the Antique Gazette.
There's that. Was it the Antique Week?
Might have been. Yeah. Whichever one is in, it's in Knightstown because it'll show up at the publication.
That was Antique Weekly.
Well, that's where the gym is. Well, the little old man and little old woman that own that paper, which a lot of auctioneers use for promoting their antiques, collectibles, and China, anything.
It is the paper for the Midwest.
You can go to, you watched Hoosiers, and now I know who they were. They're probably both deceased now. They were old then.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. I'll watch that thing, and I'll go, well, there's the, because he had the key.
He had the key to the place.
He had the key. He said, "You want to go?" I said, "Yeah, that's why I came here." And he said, "Well, I got the key. Let's go." It was it was fun. It was fun. So, what do you got going right now? And let me just say this before you start. You are really active in doing farms and ranches, and you sell tracts of land, and you're getting very, very well known for being one of the guys to call if you're going to break a piece up into tracts.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about what you're doing and what your vision is for the next, say, 5 to 10 years.
Sure. We do, as you say, the rural land. I really hang my hat on land and land real estate, and land auctions, and I love that part. We do other aspects too, but that's kind of a biggie. And breaking it up into smaller parcels, what you're talking of is the pretty commonly known as the multi-par method of selling.
Meaning multi-parcel.
In multi-parcels. So we'll take a big chunk of land, bust it up into multiple parcels. And by doing this, Mike, it, as you know, it allows multiple players to bid on a farm or on a ranch or on a piece of land that wouldn't have been able to bid on the entirety. There's more people can buy 30 acres than there are that can buy 3,000 acres just by
or even 300
or 300. And we are such believers in this. We've had great successes around the nation of selling large parcels. As you know, we sold the Hudson Ranch a few years ago, 27,000 acres. We sold a couple thousand acres up in Colorado last year, and that list goes on and on. But it's so I trust that system so much, and I've seen such great success with it. I was given the task to do probably the toughest auction of my life in October of this year, of 18, and that was the sale of our family ranch. My wife's family had a great cattle operation up in southeastern Oklahoma, and we sold several thousand acres of the Rocking F Ranch, and it did wonderful. We had players from all over the country, several states, and the ranch now is owned by 8 different people. Because it broke up and allowed.
But you got the maximum price per acre.
We got probably $1.5 million over and above what the sellers, the trust, thought they would even get because of allowing multiple people to play, and it worked.
Isn't that great?
It does work. I've seen it work for many others, and when you do it for your own, that proves your trust in the system.
Yes. I'm consistently having to tell people, they'll say, well, would you do it? And I said, I have done it.
Yeah.
I don't ask people to do something that I haven't done. Yeah. If I tell somebody that, well, I'd take it to auction, and then they go, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, it's because it's the best way to do it. You want to sell it now, you need to move it. You need the most number of eyes that will ever see it. With some marketing, you can do that. And whereas a piece of property could sit there for years, or just waiting for somebody to lower the price, and that's not really my game. Now, understand, I too list properties. Some properties are simply not suitable for an auction, and that happens.
Some deals aren't suitable for an auction.
No,
the sellers aren't timed right.
No. Or they may never be timed right.
Right. You just don't know.
But if it works, the best thing you can do is give examples of success and deliver the message as to why it's the right way to do it.
Right. People ask me all the time, Mike, why sell a piece of land at auction? Why would you do that? And I say, why wouldn't you? And I like to explain, people talk about competitive bidding. When it comes to real estate, I like to look at it as they're patting one another on the back. The bidders are embracing one another, that the property is worth that, instead of being a competitive. I don't think they're competing saying, I'm going to beat you at this. No, when you sit down to try to negotiate a price on a piece of real estate with a buyer, and they're the only buyer, they want to buy it as cheap as they can. That's our nature. That's what we do. At an auction, they know that it is worth one bidding increment less than what they're bidding, because someone else is standing right there saying, yes, I'll give $3,000 an acre. Then they bid $3,100 an acre. They don't have to feel as bad or as concerned that they're giving, quote unquote, too much for the land, right?
Yeah, because there's somebody else willing to give at the same amount.
Exactly.
Or more.
So that's what I say. Each bidder is just patting one another on the back as they take the bids.
So I think you and I both agree that the real estate auction business today is in its infancy, quite frankly. We have so much room for growth. It's only growth is what we're looking for. More property should be sold at auction. And I consistently tell people, just like here in Dallas, when you have a house sitting in Frisco and let's say it's listed for $300,000 and they're getting multiple offers, that's an auction.
Oh, yeah.
It's an auction already. Why wouldn't you just have an auction and say, we're having an auction and here's your chance to bid on it? And then there is that chance it could, most of these properties here are exceeding the list price. Why wouldn't you just take it to auction, sell it in 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and have a bigger marketplace look at it? See, that's the problem that I see. You're with a traditional listing, which is okay. I mean, it's fine. There's a place for everything. Sure. People go, they may not even be looking for that property. They may not be thinking about that property. But with an auction, with the marketing that goes along with it, it opens the market up to a lot more people.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we're in the now society. Everybody wants everything now. They want it to happen now.
Buy it now. We've been hearing that a lot.
Buy it now.
Yeah.
And no different. There's no difference in the real estate. People, when they get ready to sell something, they don't want to sell it in 6 months.
Nope. They called you today.
They want to sell it today.
That's right.
So we have a way of making that happen, whether you're talking about land, whether you're talking about commercial, whether you're talking about houses. I see it growing.
Yeah. As we wrap this thing up, I'd like for you to just give people your information. Tell them how they can get a hold of you if they want to talk to you.
You bet. Jimmie Dean Coffey, believe it or not.
Just like the sausage.
Jimmie Dean Coffey. I mean, you can't make that up.
How do you spell your last name?
Last name spelled E-Y. That's Coffey. And I think you can just probably Google Jimmie Dean Coffey, and you'll find it. And Jimmie spelled Jimmie, but it may come up either way. I'm not sure. And it's jcoffey@unitedcountry.com. And I'm out there. I'm available. Be glad to help. Talk to or visit with anyone, auctioneers or the like. And
sure.
Work with people all over the country, Mike, as you know, and it's a great privilege and honor.
When we have the CAI program roll back around here in the next month or so, do you know when it is? When is CAI this year?
It is second or third week in March.
Yeah, they can look
I can't remember the dates.
So I know you highly endorse the Certified Auctioneers Institute to any auctioneer that's been in the business a couple of years and you'd like to take your career to a higher level. You've been very, very involved and supportive of the program. You're kind of the standard bearer because you live in Bloomington. Everybody knows you. You show up. You participate. You invite people to your office. You are a goodwill ambassador to the industry, and we appreciate that. Congratulations on being the Indiana Auctioneer Champion. I think that's a great honor. And you're in the Hall of Fame, aren't you? Indiana?
In Indiana, that's right.
You're in the Hall of Fame.
My wife and I both are.
Both of you are. I know they did both of you at the same time. That was very cool. That happens very rarely. So the Hall of Fame member from Indiana, and I have no doubt in due course you'll be a Hall of Fame member in the National Auctioneers Association. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Good luck in the IAC Championship. You'll be representing your state in July in New Orleans. Nolens. Yeah. So anyway, my friend, of over 35 years, going on 40, we thank you for being a part of the program today, and so happy that you're an instructor at our auction school, and I look forward to seeing you many years to come.
Thank you, Mike. Likewise, and I appreciate your friendship.
You bet. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of everyone at the Mike McGavel Jones Show and Zach, the producer, we thank you for being a part of this one today. It's been a lot of fun, very informative. It's always good to have friends in the auction industry join us, and this is no exception to the rule. On behalf of everybody here in Dallas that makes this happen, we'll see you next time. We bid you adieu. God bless and take care.